The Strait of Hormuz is effectively on fire tonight, and the question is whether Washington has any real plan to put it out. President Trump announced Project Freedom with enormous fanfare. The Navy was supposed to guide stranded commercial ships through Iranian contested waters. U.S. and Iranian forces clashed, and then Trump paused the whole thing. A French container ship has been attacked, injured sailors are being evacuated, and a ship captain stranded in the strait told the BBC he's under enormous pressure. Meanwhile, senior U.S. officials are asking China to do the diplomatic heavy lifting. Joining me now are Marcus Webb, our defense and security analyst, and Sophia Reeves, our economics and markets editor. Marcus, let me start with you. Is this pause a tactical masterstroke, or did Iran just win a round?
Thanks, Emma. Look, let's be completely direct about what's happened here. The United States announced a military operation, named it, gave it a branding campaign, sent the Navy in, and then stopped it before achieving a single, durable objective. That's not a pause. That's a blink. And in the Middle East, where every adversary is constantly reading American body language, a blink has consequences. Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps didn't get where it is by missing signals. They've watched this pattern for decades. American resolve announced loudly, American follow-through delivered quietly. Douglas Murray has written about this exact dynamic. The West announces its principles and then negotiates against them. And here's the thing. When you announce Project Freedom and then pause it before the strait is even open, you haven't projected strength. You've projected a very expensive photo opportunity. The mullahs in Tehran aren't afraid of photo opportunities.
But Marcus, isn't there a counter-argument that a president who pauses to avoid a wider war is showing mature strategic thinking rather than recklessness? And Sophia, what's your take? Because there's an enormous economic dimension here that I'm not sure is getting enough attention.
Well, look, I think Marcus is right on the optics problem, but he's missing the bigger picture on what this actually costs. 20% of global oil supply, nearly 30% of LNG. Those aren't talking points. Those are the numbers that determine whether energy bills in Europe double, whether Asian manufacturing grinds down, whether the global recovery gets strangled. The Houthis' Red Sea campaign cost an estimated $200 billion in rerouting and delays, and the Hormuz Strait is orders of magnitude more important. Every day this drags on. Shipping insurance premiums climb, freight costs climb, and consumers pay. And here's what I find extraordinary. Rubio and Bessent are literally asking China to solve this. China. We're in the middle of a trade confrontation with Beijing, and we're simultaneously asking them for a favor in the Gulf. Beijing will name its price, and we may not like what's on the invoice.
I hear what Sophia is saying about the economics, but with respect, that framing slightly misses the point entirely. The economic cost is real, absolutely. But the reason the economics are at risk is because Iran has been allowed to believe it can coerce the world through geography. You don't solve a coercion problem by outsourcing your response to the coercer's closest ally. That's not strategy. That's managed retreat. And I completely disagree with Sophia on the China angle. Not because she's wrong that Beijing will extract a price, but because I think she's underestimating just how significant that price could be. We're not talking about a trade concession. We're talking about Beijing potentially demanding softer U.S. posture on Taiwan as the silent quid pro quo. One choke point being held hostage, potentially creating leverage over another. That's the nightmare scenario nobody's saying out loud.
Here's what I want to know, because we have U.S. and Iranian forces having already clashed in the strait, a French vessel attacked, sailors wounded, and a global shipping industry that cannot sustain this indefinitely. Where does this actually go in the next 6 months? Sophia, where do you see this playing out?
The way I see this playing out, there are really two realistic paths. Either the China diplomatic track produces some kind of face-saving de-escalation. Iran eases up, Trump claims a win, the market breathes, but that's a temporary fix built on foundations that don't hold. Or the drift continues, the economic pressure builds, insurance markets start effectively pricing the strait as uninsurable, and you get a slow-motion supply chain crisis that nobody formally declares, but everyone quietly lives with. If current trends continue, shipping companies will accelerate Cape of Good Hope rerouting, which adds 10 to 14 days and hundreds of millions in costs per voyage. That feeds directly into consumer inflation globally. The risk is that the geopolitical standoff stays below the war threshold, but above the functioning commerce threshold. And that's a sustained economic wound.
Here's what concerns me most, and I think this is the scenario that keeps serious people awake at night. It's not a deliberate decision by Washington or Tehran to go to war. Neither side wants that. The risk is miscalculation. U.S. and Iranian forces have already clashed in the Strait. One more incident. A U.S. warship seriously damaged, Iranian sailors killed in larger numbers, a commercial vessel sunk, and you get an escalation cycle that moves faster than decision-makers can manage. What history tells us, from Tonkin to the Falklands, is that the most consequential conflicts don't begin with formal declarations. They begin with a spark in a choke point nobody controlled well enough. The Strait is that choke point right now, and the margin for error is razor thin.
Razor thin is right, and somewhere between Tehran, Beijing, and a paused American naval operation, the world's most important waterway is being held together with diplomatic tape and hope. Marcus Webb, Sophia Reeves, thank you both. One thing's certain, whoever briefed President Trump that Project Freedom could be announced, clashed over, and paused in the same week, clearly didn't consult Iran first.